What if the world's most powerful man vanished, and only his son noticed? Elon Musk wakes up in a hospital bed. No screens, no emails, just silence. Then his son walks in, holding the giving tree, and asks, "Who would sit with me if you were gone?" What happens next will redefine everything Elon thought success meant. Before we continue this incredible story, let us know where you're watching from. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow we have another inspiring story you won't want to miss. Elon blinked against the brightness of the hospital lights, the ceiling above him sterile and unfamiliar. The quiet hum of machines filled the room, a low mechanical rhythm, unlike the noise he was used to. Conference calls, code reviews, engine tests. Here, the only sound was the slow beeping of a heart monitor and the faint rustle of a nurse checking vitals nearby. He tried to sit up, instinctively reaching for a device that wasn't there. No phone, no tablet, no laptop. Just a plastic ID band around his wrist and a thin hospital blanket pulled to his chest. A doctor stepped in, clipboard in hand, his voice steady and firm. "Mr. Musk, you've had a severe exhaustion episode, full physical and cognitive overload. You need to rest. No work, no devices, no exceptions." Elon opened his mouth to respond, but his voice cracked before a full sentence could form. He closed his eyes for a moment, hoping this was just a temporary interruption, a bump in the road. But deep down, he knew it wasn't. This wasn't about missing one meeting or skipping a launch. This was his body, and maybe something greater, drawing a line in the sand. The world's busiest man had finally been forced to do what he avoided for years. Not slow down, not reorganize. Completely. And in that unnatural stillness, something even more uncomfortable began to settle in. He was alone, with himself. The door opened slowly, and in stepped a small figure in a school uniform. His backpack was still slung over one shoulder, and in his arms he held a worn copy of The Giving Tree. Elon looked up, his eyes meeting those of his 8-year-old son. X didn't speak at first. He just stood there for a moment, taking in the wires, the machines, the pale color in his father's face. He looked far too serious for his age, and for a moment, Elon didn't know what to say. "Hey, buddy," Elon finally whispered, forcing a smile. "I'm okay." X walked closer but didn't return the smile. He placed the book gently on the side table and looked at Elon, his voice quiet but firm. "Are you really okay?" Elon hesitated. "Just tired. The doctors say I need some rest, nothing to worry about." But X didn't answer. He just stood there, hands in his pockets, eyes scanning every inch of his father like he was trying to read something deeper than words. Elon shifted under the blankets, unnerved by the silence. This wasn't like their usual visits. There was something heavier in the air. Without another word, X climbed onto the chair beside the bed, opened The Giving Tree, and placed it on Elon's lap. "I want you to read this," he said. Elon glanced at the cover, surprised. It was the same book he used to read to X when he was little. The pages were bent and scribbled on, the spine nearly falling apart. "Now?" Elon asked. X nodded. "Now." Elon looked at his son, his still face, his waiting eyes, and felt something shift inside him. Not pain, not fear. Something closer to awareness. So he opened the book and began to read. Elon's voice was hoarse as he read the words aloud, page by page. The simple story unfolded. The tree giving apples, branches, and trunk to the boy she loved, over and over again, until there was nothing left but a stump. Elon paused at each page, his voice faltering as the meaning sank in deeper with every turn. X sat still, eyes locked on the book. But he wasn't just listening. He was watching Elon. "Betri," X said quietly, She kept giving until there was nothing left. Elon nodded, unsure where this was going. She loved the boy. She wanted him to be happy. X looked down at his hands. Yeah, but at the end... She couldn't even stand up anymore. Elon closed the book gently. It's a classic. It's about love, sacrifice. X turned to him. Is that you, Dad? The question hit harder than Elon expected. He let out a soft breath, trying to shrug it off. I'm fine. It's just work. Everyone gets tired sometimes. But X didn't move. His voice was barely above a whisper. No, you don't just get tired, you disappear. Elon stared at him, caught off guard. You don't come home some nights. You miss dinner. You sleep through weekends. You always say it's important. But what if it costs everything? I'm trying to build a better future, Elon said, his tone defensive, almost rehearsed. X looked up again, his face suddenly older than his years. I don't want a better future without you in it. Elon's throat tightened. You're not a tree. You're my dad, and I don't want a stump. He looked directly into Elon's eyes. I want you. There was no reply. Elon had faced journalists, critics, engineers, and boards of directors, but in that moment, nothing had ever disarmed him like the quiet truth of his son's voice. And just outside the room, 2 nurses had paused their rounds again, listening. Elon stared at the book, now resting closed on the side table. His hands rested limp at his sides, the IV tubing slightly tugging as he moved. The weight of his son's words hadn't left the room. They hung there, heavier than anything the machines could measure. X swung his legs beneath the chair, silent, eyes wandering. Then, as if picking up a thread Elon couldn't see, he said softly, Do you remember Christmas? Elon looked at him, confused for a second. Last year? X nodded. The piano. Elon closed his eyes, the image forming immediately. It had been Christmas Eve. The tree was lit. He'd been home. Miraculously, for a full 24 hours, X had begged him to sit at the piano. They had played together, laughing at missed notes, singing just slightly off-key. You liked that song, Elon said. The one from the movie? What was it called? He smiled faintly. Yeah, but that's not why I liked it. Elon waited. It wasn't the music, X continued. It was because you were there. You didn't look at your phone once. Elon's heart dropped. He remembered that night differently. He had thought the piano part was silly, a distraction, something he had done to humor his son, but now, hearing this, he realized that moment had been everything. The hallway outside remained quiet. The nurses didn't move. One leaned gently against the wall, arms crossed, as if frozen in her own memory. I don't think people remember the buildings you build, X said, still staring forward. Not really, but they remember how you made them feel, Elon swallowed. That's something Maya Angelou once said. X looked at him with soft eyes. You read that one to me too. There was a long pause. I just wanted more days like that piano one, X added, not because of what we played, but because I wasn't alone. Elon leaned back against the pillow. The ache in his chest had nothing to do with exhaustion now. It was something deeper, something pressing on his soul. All his life he had talked about saving humanity, colonizing Mars, rewriting energy, building futures. But sitting in this white room, beside a boy with big eyes and a quiet voice, he finally asked himself a question he had never paused to consider. What about saving one boy? What if everything else, the rockets, the speeches, the vision, meant nothing if this child grew up feeling like he came second to a machine? X turned back to face him directly. Can I help you change? Elon didn't answer right away. He just stared at his son, at the door, at the quiet hum of the machines that had taken over where his energy had failed. And for the first time in years, He didn't feel the urge to problem solve, to delegate, or to dismiss. He just felt. And that was new. Elon shifted in the hospital bed, his gaze still fixed on X. The question had landed like a stone in a still pond, and its ripples were spreading through everything he thought he knew. "Can I help you change?" It echoed in his mind, not as a challenge, but as an invitation, one he could either accept or run from, like he had so many times before. But this time was different. There were no distractions, no meetings to interrupt, no tech emergency waiting for his input, just the quiet presence of his son. Elon sat up a little straighter and reached for the remote to silence the monitor's beeping. Then he looked at X and gave a small nod. "Yes," he said, "you can." X's eyes lit up, not with excitement, but with something deeper. Relief. Like he'd been holding his breath for months. "Really?" he asked cautiously. "Really," Elon replied. "But I'll need a partner." X's shoulders straightened, like he'd just been promoted to an important role. "What kind of partner?" Elon gestured toward the whiteboard on the far wall. "We're going to design something, together, a new protocol." "For what?" X asked. "For life," Elon answered. "A balanced life. One where being your dad isn't squeezed in between rocket launches. One where I show up, fully." X smiled, hopped off the chair, and grabbed the dry erase marker. "What do we call it?" Elon thought for a moment. "The Balanced Life Protocol." And with that, they began. X drew a big rectangle labeled Dad Time. Elon added bullet points: piano, story hour, walks with no phones. They brainstormed like engineers. Elon's old way of fixing things, but this time the blueprint was for something more human. No screens during dinner. One full day per weekend just for family. Scheduled curiosity hours where X could ask any question and Elon would answer, undistracted. The more they planned, the more Elon realized something strange. Presence, he thought, isn't just a feeling, it's a discipline. Like learning an instrument or building a rocket. You don't get good at it by accident. X added another box on the board, this one with stars and a big circle. "What's this?" Elon asked. X grinned. "The consequence zone. If you miss dad time, I get to choose what we do next." Elon raised an eyebrow. "Anything?" "Anything," X confirmed. Elon pretended to think hard. "Even Disneyland?" X's smile widened. "Especially Disneyland." Elon laughed, a real, full laugh that startled even himself. "Deal?" he said. The nurses in the hallway, once listening quietly, glanced at each other and smiled. There was life in the room again, a kind of hope they didn't see often in their rounds. Elon looked at his son, then at the board, and then back again. This was the first architecture plan he'd drafted in years that didn't need funding, didn't need approval, and wouldn't launch into orbit. It would launch something better, a life where he wasn't just remembered as a builder of machines, but as a father who stayed. "If I miss it," Elon said, tapping the board, "you get to pick anything." "Even Disneyland?" X didn't say anything. He just nodded. And for the first time, Elon felt like he was building something that wouldn't need to be rebooted, updated, or replaced. Just needed him. The hospital days faded into memory, and soon Elon was back at SpaceX. The energy returned like a wave. Emails stacked by the hundreds, meetings triple booked, and urgent voices flooding his office from every direction. It was the world he had mastered, the rhythm he had built his legacy on. But something was different now. On his desk sat a small, handwritten calendar. It didn't track launch dates or product rollouts. It had piano stickers, Lego bricks, and red stars marking days with a single title: Dad Time. At first, it was easy to defend. A Wednesday evening off, a Sunday walk in the park, those seemed harmless. But the deeper he got into the schedule, the more friction he faced. One Thursday, a critical strategy session for a Mars payload launch was scheduled for 6 p.m., the exact time he was supposed to help X build his school project about space habitats. His chief of staff glanced at the conflict and asked, "Should I reschedule the family block?" Elon stared at the screen for a moment. The reflex answer was yes. But then he saw it. The image from the hospital room, the giving tree reduced to a stump. His son's voice. "I don't want a stump. I want my dad." "No," Elon said firmly. "Move the Mars session." There were murmurs, some eyebrows raised. One investor sent a sharp email later that night questioning his focus. But Elon didn't blink. He didn't explain. He didn't apologize. The next test came harder. Tesla had a global partner summit, and Elon was expected to deliver a keynote. It fell on the same weekend he had promised X they would camp in the backyard and stargaze. Every instinct screamed to shift the plan, just for this one time. He even typed out the message to X, ready to hit send. "Something came up, we'll do it next weekend." His thumb hovered over the screen. Then he looked at the piano sticker on Saturday, and he remembered X drawing it. He put the phone down. The keynote went virtual, someone else delivered it, and Elon, wearing a hoodie and jeans, helped his son set up a telescope near the garden. The stars came out, one by one. Over time, people noticed. His assistant began adding buffer zones to the calendar. Engineers quietly mentioned seeing him happier. Even his mother May commented during dinner, "I haven't seen you this present since you were in college." And yet, not everyone understood. Some board members raised concerns about productivity. A few headlines speculated whether he was slowing down. During an interview with a major tech magazine, a journalist finally asked the question directly. "You've shifted a lot recently. Less travel, fewer late nights." Elon leaned back in his chair. For a moment, he considered giving a strategic answer, something polished, but instead, he smiled. "My most important advisor is 8 years old." The quote went viral, and Elon didn't care. Because every day he showed up for dad time, X would point to the piano sticker on the calendar, give him a thumbs up, and say, "Still on track." And that track, the one with stars and cardboard telescopes and bedtime jokes, felt more solid than any launch pad Elon had ever built. The seasons changed quietly. Summer faded into a gentle fall, and with it came something new in Elon, something steadier. He looked different now. The bags under his eyes had softened, the tension in his shoulders eased. He still worked, still led companies and teams, but the frantic edge was gone. His schedule still included launch updates and design reviews, but right alongside them were school pickups, late-night stargazing, and Saturday piano lessons. On one quiet Saturday morning, X sat at the piano bench, legs swinging, fingers hesitating over the keys. Elon stood beside him, coffee in hand, watching patiently. "Try it again," Elon said softly. "Don't rush." X took a breath and began. The melody of Clair de Lune drifted into the room, delicate and unsure. There were mistakes, small ones, but X didn't stop. He pressed on, every note a little braver than the one before. When he reached the final chord, he looked up at Elon and smiled. "You're a good teacher," he said. Elon sat down beside him, one hand resting on the wood of the piano. He looked at his son, not just seeing him, but really noticing him. The curve of his smile, the confidence that wasn't there months ago. "I'm learning too," Elon said quietly. "About real success." X tilted his head. "What do you mean?" Elon took a moment before answering. "I used to think success was building something the whole world would use, but I've learned it's also showing up for the one person who needs you the most." X didn't respond right away. He just leaned his head against Elon's shoulder and stayed there. They sat in silence, the kind of silence that's full of meaning. Upstairs, the calendar with the piano sticker still hung on the wall. Some had stars drawn next to them. Others had notes like, "Best day ever," or "Dad didn't check his phone." Downstairs, the machines Elon once poured his life into kept running without him. Engines still turned, factories still produced, code still shipped. But none of it asked for him the way X did. None of it loved him back. Later that evening, Elon walked through the garden behind the house. The telescope was still set up from their last stargazing night, tilted toward the sky. He glanced at the stars and smiled. They were still up there. The future was still out there. But so was now. And now, finally, had its place. He returned to the house, and X met him at the door. "Can we play again?" X asked. Elon nodded. "Always." They sat at the piano once more. The song didn't have to be perfect. It just had to be shared. And as X played, Elon watched him closely, not as a father watching a student, but as a man grateful to be part of something he hadn't built with blueprints or billions, but with time, attention, and love. In that moment, he didn't feel like the tree from the story anymore. He didn't feel hollow or used up. He felt like something else entirely. The tree, Elon whispered to himself, wouldn't have to give everything anymore, just enough to grow. Maybe you've built everything, a career, a name, a full calendar, even a legacy people admire. But somewhere along the way, maybe you forgot to build space for what matters most. Not the kind of success others applaud, but the quiet kind. The kind that waits at the dinner table, asks for bedtime stories, or slips a hand into yours without saying a word. When was the last time you chose presence over pressure? We live in a world that rewards movement, productivity, endless achievement, but it rarely celebrates stillness, eye contact, a shared laugh in the middle of an ordinary day. Elon Musk, one of the busiest, most brilliant men on Earth, nearly missed it until his son asked a question no boardroom ever would. "Who would sit with me if you weren't here anymore?" That question didn't come from a place of logic or strategy. It came from love, from longing, from the space between what Elon thought was success and what actually made him human. And maybe that space is where something needs to shift in your own life. You don't have to build a rocket or run a company to feel overwhelmed. You might just be trying to keep up with bills, deadlines, expectations, or even the noise of your phone. But presence, real presence, isn't about having free time. It's about making time, intentionally, consistently, even imperfectly. Start small. Turn off one notification. Eat one meal without a screen. Listen to one story from a child, a spouse, or even your own heart without interrupting. You don't have to have all the answers. You just have to be there. Because sometimes, everything you've built means less than the one person waiting for you to look up and simply see them. If this story moved you, you're not alone. We all need reminders like this. We all need space to pause, to reflect, to recenter. And we hope this story gave you that space, even if just for a few minutes. Subscribe for more stories like this, because sometimes a child's question changes everything. And when that moment comes for you, may you have the courage not just to answer it, but to live it.